somebody who can love me and my word. No, I'm not perfect, but I hope you see my worth. Since only you, nobody knew I put you first. After you, girl, I swear I do the work. If you stay for a moment, let me hold your hand. I can feel those places in your heart, no one else can. Let me show you love, 100%. I'll be right here, baby, you know I take one's way. I need somebody who can love me and my word. No, I'm not perfect, but I hope you see my worth. Since only you, nobody knew I put you first. After you, girl, I swear I do the work. Magandang dilag, puso ko yung nabihag. Wala nang hinanais, ligaya aking labis. Oh, magandang dilag. Esto a mí me rebota, desde que llamaba fui la oficial de ti, ya te el número cambiaste. Magandang dilag. Bawat lakad mo, lahat sila napapatingin. Di mawari, ba't ganun ang nangyayari sa akin? Isang ngiti mo lang parang nakakabaliw. Ano bang ginawa mo? Ako'y naaaliw. Natanaw kita, para bang isang tala sa gitna ng kalawakan. Oh, magandang dilag. Esto a mí me rebotaste, desde que llamaba fui la oficial de ti, ya te el número cambiaste. Magandang dilag.
nadarama. Ay chinita, girl, ay chinita. Palang ako'y natunaw na. Mga titig mo sa akin nakabighanin na. Di ko mapigilang aking nadarama. Ay chinita, girl, ay chinita. Girl, ay chinita. Palang ako'y natunaw na. Mga titig mo sa akin nakabighanin na. Di ko mapigilang aking nadarama. Ay chinita, girl, ay chinita.
DJ Johnny Cagayno Remix. DJ Johnny Cagayno Remix. Gusto mo ba mag-TikTok? TikTok sa umaga, TikTok sa tanghali, TikTok sa gabi. Kahit sa work, TikTok pa rin. Sabayan mo na si DJ Johnny Cagayno Remix, ang pinaka-viral ngayon sa buong Pilipinas. Let's party! DJ Johnny Cagayno. Johnny Cagayno Remix. DJ Johnny Cagayno. Johnny Cagayno.
Ako suka.
DJ Johnny Cagayno Remix. DJ Jonel sa Gyno Remix.
Staying on top of the core concepts of sustainable investing can add value to your clients, your team, and your organization. Confidently communicate with stakeholders, build technical fluency in assessing climate-related risks and opportunities, and learn how sustainability factors affect investment performance. Start today to gain the insights and skills.
Can you hear me now? Good. I'm good. I'm good. How about you? Same here. Yeah. Same here. Oh, yeah, that's fine, man.
Hello. All right, people. It's 9:40. I think we can get started with the session. Just give me a sec here. Let me make sure I have all the chats open. All right. Everyone's set up. Everyone's set up. Get your cameras on, your mics all on, actually. Especially my two panelists that are here currently. Okay. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first TechPod, organized by Blues Birds, which is going to be hosted by me. Today, we're going to be discussing a very interesting topic that's been popping up recently, especially in the African space, which is that of digital sovereignty. But before we dive into the different stories that are going to drive our conversation tonight, I would love my panelists, Elikem and Jeremiah, who are here today, to give us a lovely introduction. Give us your name, what you do, maybe even a fun fact about yourself, right, to help us get used to you guys. I leave the floor to you. Who wants to start?
Sure, I will. So my name is Jeremiah, Jeremiah Barton. I am a software engineer. I've been working professionally for, I'd say, about a little over 6 years now. But I got exposed to technology at a very young age. So I think right after my BEC, when I started learning how to code. So I've been dabbling in technology for quite some time now. And over the course of my career, I've worked on low-level systems, like embedded systems, IoT devices, where are very close to the hardware. And stuff that is much more higher up in the stack, like cloud infrastructure, provisioning, cloud infrastructure, and DevOps, that kind of work. So then it's been an interesting journey so far. But one thing I really am interested in is how technology can be used to solve applicants' problems. And that's one of the reasons why I'm very interested in this conversation we're having today. Fun fact about myself, I'm a very avid anime watcher. Yeah, I love anime quite a lot. So, to all those who think anime is cartoons, I have a problem with it.
Well, a
All
lovely
right.
introduction and just a rich background. Sorry, Elikem. Let's move on to you.
Okay. All right. Let me just turn on my camera. I think most of you know me, but just for the purpose of this, my name is Eli Kambansa. Recent grad from HSC. Over the last couple of years, I have been building and breaking things. In different areas of software development, really. I have meddled with AI. I have done a bit of DevOps, cyber, even more recently. And I've been doing a bit more ed tech. Yeah. I currently do work as an FI and run like a software development company. My recent interests have been more around ed tech and building for educational institutions. One of the things I think a few students in HSC are familiar with is the coding platform. That was, yeah, okay, well, you probably don't know about it, but I think just one person here, or three people. Yeah, Lee uses it for labs, so she's most familiar about it. But the concept is just basically an IDE that is supposed to like access learning, especially in the age of AI, where people are saying, CS students are getting dumber, etc. So it's just supposed to process learning, facilitate learning, sorry. But yeah, that's like a bit about what I do. I just help build things for people. And a fun fact about me, I'm trying to say something other than anime. Oh, I do love watching cartoons like SpongeBob and what's the other one? I watch a lot of cartoons basically. Yeah. Aside anime, I watch a lot of cartoons. I think they help me. They help push my imagination. And did I answer the questions? Is there something left?
Oh no, you answered it perfectly, actually.
Okay, that's fine. That's great. I'm gonna just turn on my camera now since we've all seen my face now. Yeah. Okay.
That's good. All right, so we have very rich backgrounds here, interesting interests, we can say, especially in cartoons and anime. Would love to know what you guys are on currently, but let's dive into the topic right away. Accompanying us are my two associates, Frank and Liz. I'll let them give like a quick introduction as well. They'll be helping in chipping in and giving their own opinions, so like their thoughts on what we'll be talking about tonight. So Frank, Liz, you guys go ahead.
Hi, my name is Frank. I'm a computer science student. That's it.
No, Frank, I think there's more you can say about yourself.
I
Yeah, you
mean,
can add more.
Jeremiah and Elkim already said anime, but I don't know what else I can take. Um, I would say maybe I got into computer science for the love of games, but now I feel like I got scammed or I got into something I didn't know what it was about. Yeah. That's one fun fact I would share. Yeah.
Interesting. And Liz, we're on to you now.
Yeah, hi everyone. So like my name is
Hi.
Liz Claudia Irera and I'm a computer science student as well at HSC. And yeah, I mean I love learning new things, and I'm still deciding if I really want to continue in this field. But it's something that is really interesting to me, and I want to learn more. So I still have that spark of like learning more things in the field. Yeah. And one fun fact about me is that my like I don't know if I should call it career or being in this field. Like my career process, it's not a career. Okay, but the process has been very funny because I started like when I was a kid. I wanted to do medicine, but then I did some English immersion program and like pre-university program. And then I was into biology, chemistry thing, and but I also had like some CS like some programming stuff. Then, but when I was applying to HSC, I applied as an economic student. But when I go here, I switched to CS. So it has been a lot of things in my head and yeah, confusion. Yeah, I think that's the fun fact that I will share about me among many other things. Yeah, I think that's all. Thank you.
Nice to meet
Amazing background. Thanks for sharing, ma'am. As you can see, people here, everyone here has some kind of unique story that they can use, that they're going to use to contribute to today's meeting. We have two more panelists that are supposed to come in. One is going to be here at 10 p.m., so expect him then, and the other hasn't gotten that to me yet. We can get started with the topic right away with just some soft launch questions, right? And the very first one, well, like I mentioned, we're going to be talking about digital sovereignty tonight. And to establish a baseline for our viewers, I would like to ask Jeremiah how you would practically define digital sovereignty in your daily work. The floor is yours.
digital sovereignty. I think from an individual point of view is your ability to decide which digital technologies and platforms you use and rely on, right? You having the ability to control what your data is used for, where your data is stored, how it's processed, right, is how I define digital sovereignty. Right? And so an example would be if you, let's say, use a social media app, right? Although you have posted your videos and your images on that platform, that doesn't mean that you want the platform to use it for whatever purpose they deem fit, right? There are still things that you will want to have control over how that media is used, right? And so I would say digital sovereignty mainly it's about you being able to have a decision-making power in how your information or the digital tools you use manage your data.
That's a very good definition, at least on a personal level. But I would like to hear a perspective from Elicamps on the topic. Well, how would you define digital sovereignty, particularly in your line of work as well?
All right, thank you so much for the question. So I think most of my work is done in Africa. Most of my work is done maybe even in Ashesi perhaps. But I think working in Africa, what I understand about digital sovereignty is being less dependent on Western technology, right? It's just something I see around different organizations and institutions and even firms, right? When they think about, for instance, AI and all the different technologies that are coming up, they try and see, can we build our own? Like that's one question that people think about. People think about data privacy. Where is my data going? Is my data going to be here in Africa? Is it going to be somewhere else? Is it going to be an in-house thing? You know, so when I think about digital sovereignty first, I think about, you know, Africans owning the technology, right? And then secondly, I also think about individuals owning technology, owning their own data, and being able to contribute significantly to digital systems. Yeah. I don't know if that was clear.
Oh, that was very good.
Okay.
Especially when looking at it from an entities or national level, that's pretty much tackles the definition of digital sovereignty on that end. And here he comes, Mr. Francis. Welcome to the podcast. Just give us a brief introduction since we've gotten started with the topic. And afterwards, you can get to answering the question of how would you define digital sovereignty, especially in your line of work. The floor is yours.
Yeah, guys, can you hear me? Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, so thank you very much, Gerald and team, for the opportunity to join this podcast. Yeah, I deem it an honor. Thank you. So I'm Francis Osei, and I'm doing startup in, Ghanaian, working on across several sectors in logistics, custom software, and AI as well. Yeah, so you can see I'm a tech guru, but I'm on the side of entrepreneurship, basically. That's a little bit about me. Yeah, and I think with the question you did ask, what is data sovereignty, and in relation to the things that I do, I think data sovereignty, when you get to think about it's the definition is in its name, data and sovereignty, right? Sovereignty is basically like independence, you being able to self-reliance, basically, right? And for the work that we do, to be honest, as an African, most of the data that we generate, yeah, we have a lot of data that we generate, but then in terms of we owning it, I'm afraid to say we are not. There is less sovereignty in this. So yeah, if I have to answer your question, data sovereignty is being able to own the entire pipeline that transforms data to useful information. Yeah.
Very practical definition, at least from a data standpoint. Thank you very much for your contributions. That adds a little bit to the topic, or at least to clarify what we're tackling today. From what I've heard at least, if we were to look at it from a personal level, how do you personally reassure that the data that you own is sovereign? Let's go with Jeremiah, or who wants to go first this time around? So of me choosing randomly.
Okay, I can take the first one.
All right. I was about to choose anyway.
Um,
Right.
So for me personally, I I try to use platforms that, to the best of my ability, and I'll be sure that they have rigorous, should I say, rigorous processes in place on how they manage and use my data, right? And at least if they have certain features that could use my data in a way that I don't like it, I should at least be able to opt out of that. So a good example is when Google started rolling out its AI baked features in Google Docs, Google Sheets, Gmail. I disabled all of that, right? Because I, particularly when it comes to communication, I still think it's good for you to write your own emails. And because I feel like when you're communicating with somebody, they want to hear what you're saying. They don't want to hear what an AI is saying. Right. So I turned off all of that. And then I also try as much as I can to use tools, at least when I'm developing, right, that are open source, that have, or at least they are source available, right? So you can actually look through the source code and see what the person is doing and how the platform actually runs, right? So personally, for platforms, trying to use platform that I can be sure that if they decide to go in a different direction or a direction that I don't agree with, I can at least opt out of that direction. And when it comes to work related stuff, I would try to use tools that, even if they are not open source in a strict sense, they are at least source aware. Oh, sorry, source available. I'm so sorry, source available.
Interesting. Very structured way. It seems like you've thought a lot about, where your data goes and how you actually keep it. It's quite interesting. I'm quite curious to see how Mr. Francis, or actually, Elikam, you have your hand up. How you then make sure that your data is sovereign to some extent on a personal level.
Okay. So, thank you so much for the question and for the opportunity. I think when I think about data sovereignty and how to kind of tackle it, the almost, I don't know what I should call it, brute force answer, or like the first answer that comes into mind is, oh, okay, like let's run our own service. Let's build our own model. Let's do our own this. Let's do our own that. Um, and I think all of that is great to know, but the reality is doing such things are very expensive. And so sometimes I guess maybe you could say money stops you from being ultimately sovereign or independent. But I think there are other ways that I try to achieve sovereignty. I try to be independent from one particular uh, group, let me put it that way, or one particular resource, right? So one of the ways I like to also do my things is, aside, trying to go for open source resources, I also, when I'm building, I try to build in a very modular approach. So what that means is, if I don't like how Gemini is doing something, I can switch it to maybe a ChatGPT API. Or if I don't like AWS, we are going to Hostinga or something, like, just I think digital sovereignty is also the ability to have a choice. right? And so when I think about that and how I apply it to my daily life, these are just the little things that I do. I try to make sure that I'm not boxed in one situation, or I'm not like totally dependent on one resource for, I don't know. I don't know, let's say forever, but I just have the choice to choose different resources and different um, infrastructure, digital services that I can use and apply. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, that's a very nice note. At least it kind of, you know, tells us a little more. But one thing I noted for sure from what you just said is, in fact, one thing that marked me is the point where you mentioned that the ability to make a choice, right, as to where your data goes is what defines your digital sovereignty. And on that note, Mr. Francis, we're going to move to a company level, right, an organizational level. Based on the sort of different approaches that Elikem and Jeremiah, approach digital sovereignty. What do you think is, from those point of views, is the most dangerous misconception that corporate leaders, right, these days hold regarding where their data physically lie or lives? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm not very sure if I fully heard what Jeremiah said, but I don't know, Jeremiah, maybe 10 seconds. Can you just summarize what you said again so that I can have full context?
Oh, sure. Well, I would think that in my day-to-day affairs, right, I tend to use platforms that that one have a rigorous process for how they handle customer data, and two, allow you to be able to opt out of features or services that would use your data in a way that I wouldn't agree with, right? And then secondly would be when it comes to like development work or tools I use for development, I prefer to use open source tools.
Okay.
Or if the tool is not strictly open source, at least it's a tool that has the source code available, right? So even for my daily job, I use Linux. I've been using it quite long. Especially then second year in uni, and I've never looked back.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much. So I think we, like organizations, most of the time so again, in Africa, that's where I stay and I live. Leaders here, organizational leaders here really don't care. I would say, I'm using the word or the term care very carefully here. I don't mean they don't mind, but then the level of passion attached to where a user's data is stored as compared to other regions of the world, we can do better. In other words, we can do better, right? So what our leaders mostly want to say is, does it work? Yes. They don't care where it lives. And I think Elikem made a choice of he made a point of you being able to select one way or the other. I've not thought about that, but like thinking about it, I really think, yeah, that is like also sovereignty in its own way. However, it's if you still are not able to manipulate the storage layer of this data, then your sovereignty is somehow capped to a degree. Yeah. So my simple answer to the question is that leaders find it difficult. Maybe sometime to come, we can do better. But for now, we only are looking at what works. Does application A, B, C, D works? We don't care what really goes into it. There are industries that I know of, like for example, the healthcare industry in Ghana, like this. Anytime maybe you are trying to make something happen for them, they are quite curious where the data lives, because this is medical information of people. You don't want a foreign-owned company like AWS, Amazon Web Service, or some other, maybe Google Cloud, or who has never worked for this information, just for the fact that they are providing a storage layer for you, have access to it. And you also can't just say that because you sign a TNC agreement with them, you can 100% trust them, yeah. So it's that's the challenge we are facing now. But I think that maybe as we move on, things will get better a bit. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And the point stands, leaders don't really care about where the digital space of Africa specifically goes, but rely more on the short-term convenience, right, of using like external providers that we mentioned. In summary, at least in big summary, I can get. But Jeremiah, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think leaders don't really care, or do you think it's an infrastructure problem here in Africa?
I think it's an issue of priorities, right? Because, like Francis said, other areas in the world, they seem to care a lot more about where the customers' data live, right? And you would see that it was not automatic, right? Certain things happened, and people realized that, okay, data is very, very important, and who has access to it and who can control access to it. These are extremely important, right? And so they make policies in place to ensure that there's a standard to how data is processed and stored and is dealt with, right? And I think in Africa, unfortunately, we are still battling underlying infrastructure issues, right? And so it makes it difficult for a business to prioritize some of these things, because if I want to compete in a digital space and everybody's moving fast, right, I have to pick what works. I have to pick a system that is battle tested, is reliable, I know it works, right? I'm not going to try to build something from the ground up, right? And then we have in the program, people would say, oh, don't use any library. And people will come back and say, so before you build an application, I'm going to start coding it in assembly, right? You will just pick the tried and tested tool to build what you want to build. You get it? So I think part to get our leaders to start to prioritize digital sovereignty and how data is managed, they need to understand the value of the data and understand what it can give you, right? And also, we need to deal with underlying infrastructure issues, because it's very difficult to have a conversation about digital sovereignty when you still don't have stable electricity all over the country. So if your light goes off, yeah, the data is stored locally, but then now nobody can access it. You get it? So I think dealing with the underlying infrastructural problems allows us to move towards a higher level where we can now deal with stuff like digital sovereignty.
Thank you very much for very insightful feedback. And you just smoothly transitioned us into our very first story for tonight, which is I'm just gonna share the article here for those who want to read. Real quick. I'm gonna share my screen. Where can I share that? Yes. So on the question of infrastructure, right? Um, the very first thing, or in fact, to introduce the next part, the first story is about internet outage here in Africa, right? So on there's this specific event that happened on March 13th, 2024, where there was an extensive damage to underwater fiber optic cables, which triggered a major internet outage across several parts of Africa. West African nations were among the most severely impacted by this, with Ivory Coast, Liberia, Nigeria, and Ghana experiencing significant connectivity disruptions, right? As a result of that. And data center provider Main One reported that a break in the submarine cable system contributed to a regional blackout, right? And additionally, several major submarine systems, including the West African cable system, in Africa's coast to Europe, to Europe's, to Africa coast to Europe, yeah, and SAT-3, I think, were affected during the outage, right? Like it really messed up a bunch of things during that week that they were trying to figure out or like troubleshoot the issue. And in Ghana specifically, here, network subscribers relying on MTN Ghana and Telecel Ghana suffered the greatest disruption to their service. Just to soft launch the first story. So essentially, there was a huge issue with lines there, and it caused a lot of like outages. Which brings me now to the question, right? We've witnessed, I just read, like we've witnessed the economic paralysis caused by these 2024 West African cable cuts. But is it true digital sovereignty is true digital sovereignty possible, or is every nation, right, fundamentally at the mercy of like physical geography? Taking Ghana as a use case. Sorry, that's a sample case here. Open floor, or I could just pick someone to answer it.
I mean, when I think about it, I think it's just like Jeremiah was saying, right?
Right. Yeah, essentially,
You
yeah.
can try and like achieve digital sovereignty maybe in the most complete form, but some of the infrastructure has to be in place. The truth about digital sovereignty is, there's this thing that you say that there's no such thing as a cloud. The cloud is actually a physical server somewhere. You can't really it just goes to show that what powers a lot of software, you kind of need like a machine to power the software, to power the digitization that you want, right? And the reality is we can't, or we don't, maybe I shouldn't say we don't really have the systems in place to support that in Africa yet, because maybe I'm hopeful for some African countries, but that's actually the reality. There are a lot of things we've done right to support digitalization in Africa, or to support digital sovereignty in Africa. But I like to think I'm a generally hopeful person for this continent. So maybe I think we can. I think we are getting there. People are doing things to try and get there. People are doing wonderful things on the continent to try and get there. Let's give it a couple of years and see. Yeah, those are my 2 cents on it.
All right, that's absolutely great. Francis,
Yeah.
do you want to say something? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, yeah, brilliant points made. You have to be optimistic. I mean, with the African story, it's something that only God can explain, and I think that we at this point we need a lot of optimism. Is the reason why I'm saying, hey, I really like that. But coming to the infrastructure problem, I still even think that we could even go one layer deep below the infrastructure issue, where you could have, you guys know that energy runs any economy. Any modern economy is run on energy. You can bypass energy and say, hey, you want to run an economy, right? So let's assume you have energy, you have infrastructure. Let's say the United States has said that, hey, poor Africans, we want to give you, let's say, 300 million USD worth of data centers in Accra, or maybe Lomé, or somewhere in Yaoundé or something. We are bringing our nuclear reactors and everything for free energy. Take this. Would we be able to run it? That's the problem. So it transcends beyond the physical thing. It transcends beyond the physical thing, where the human capital is the main problem. Are we equipped enough? Are we seeking deeper truth? Are we seeking deeper knowledge to to man some of these systems that they are so complex that even if we are given the manual for which, open book manual to decipher them, we might not be able to, get them to their feet again, So I think that the problem is, yes, of course, infrastructure, but I'll point the very basis, the genesis of everything as knowledge seeking. We should like be, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself in presenting a solution, but it should be more of seeking deeper knowledge aside. Jeremiah wants to speak. Aside, let's see, just shallow. Yeah, Jeremiah, please, you can come in. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you for that. So I would say I don't fully agree with it being the human capital.
Yeah.
I think people would go where the money is, and we've seen it with AI. A lot of people have shifted into learning artificial intelligence and data science and machine learning because it's a field that is paying a lot of money. And we saw this also with crypto. A lot of people shifted into learning cryptocurrency, NFTs, and blockchain because at that time it was paying a lot of money, right? And so we've seen these patterns. People will go where the money is, and they will learn the things that the market will pay for, because when it comes to employment, it is a market, right? And if you want more money, you have to go out the skills that those who have the money will pay for, right? And so if people today went to a school to say, I want to learn to become a data center technician, how many data centers are available for me to work at after I'm done? Right. And so that transition between going to gain the knowledge to becoming efficient at it, whereby you can now be effective and contribute, whereby you can now contribute effectively, there's a break there because there are not enough of them for you to gain that level of experience to actually contribute effectively. And so somebody's making a practical decision, they will look at what is around them. And I quite remember my mentor once told me that when he was in university and he was learning computer science, his family and friends would mock him because they would say, why are you learning about a computer that you have never seen before? Because at that time, there were no computers in right. And so, but now, people go to school, people go to university to learn computer science because they've seen there are opportunities in that field. And so I think that if we do have the infrastructure, and now it's possible for us to have these data centers and have these nuclear energy plants and have these systems, then people will be interested to be trained to be able to take over them. But if you don't have the infrastructure, then even if I have the training, how do I apply it in my home country?
Yeah. I truly get your point, and I think you're right, but to a degree. So with knowledge, there are layers of knowledge, right? You're a programmer or a software guy, I can tell from the way you're speaking, and a lot of African programmers aren't working at bare metal. When I say bare metal, they're not working close to the hardware. How many times have you seen a Black person writing a library for, let's say, training an AI stuff or something? These are coming from America and China. Again, these are individuals who are they don't just come up and say most of the time they are not even using ChatGPT to code. They are at the bleeding edge of knowledge and technology, where if they don't move, it's research. They implement research, right? So these guys are bringing in new knowledge, and I would say that is like level 0 of knowledge. Then you might come to level 1 where they've already come up with the knowledge and establish the facts and say, hey, if you want to write hello world in Python, launch a code editor, write print something brackets into strings and type it. So you find the African engineer or the African application engineer always at that level where the knowledge has been set and he's one step behind, right? So when the American guy, or like let's say the Chinese guy, comes and say, oh, initially I told you it was print something, but now I've added a colon at the end, you would have to follow, right? So it makes us it makes our human capital only n-1 of what is happening. You can't be at the end. Do you get what I mean? And in a world where things are changing and time is moving exponentially, like, to be honest, I woke up today in the morning and the next thing it's like 10:21 and I'm on this call. Time is moving fast. We open our feeds every morning and we see the latest AI model news happening. You get what I mean? You can't compete with such a thing, right? At that point, the infrastructure that would exist, you can't man them up. So that's my point. My point is that to be able to create wealth, right? Wealth creation is being able to create something out of nothing. To be able to truly be a part of the conversation. The knowledge-seeking guys are guys who we call, oh, child, this guy is very brilliant and all of that. And see, Jeremiah, one of them, you are very brilliant. Then you should now go into like you shouldn't be at the print hello world stage. Now you should go into the assembly machine language. You should be able to take a program and break it down. And at that point, you have liberty to innovate and bring something else. Maybe yours would be printify with maybe a colon or something. Then now the Chinese has to learn that. You get what I mean? So in that case, if that program of yours is running on certain hardware, you can set the instructions to it. I mean, there are certain, you guys should know this, like I think there are a lot of CS guys here. The instruction set that are being run, it's defined by the Westerners. It's the reason why China is just a step behind the USA. If the Chinese guys were defining their own RIGS-V instruction set and all of that, then the Americans will be -1 behind them. So I think that's my point. I'm talking a lot, but yeah, that's my point. My point is that to truly innovate, you should be at the bleeding end of knowledge, and you can man up anything that comes in. Yeah, thanks.
So one point to that. So I think maybe I'm speaking a bit parallel to what you're saying. So I like the example you gave about programming languages, right? So I work on IoT systems. So sometimes I have to write such low level code. And I think the year I listened to an interview about the creator of C++, and he was talking about the story of how he came to create C. And he was working, I believe, he was working on a simulation software, and he was running into problems with C. And so he decided that the way I'm writing this code is not working for how I want to model the software. And so what if I had a different way to express how I'm writing this code, right? But the reason why he was doing this was for a project from Bell, right? And the reason Bellas was doing this project was because they're actually going to sell the project to people, right? And so when I'm talking about the infrastructure piece, what I'm saying is that for us to be able to get to the point whereby African programmers are creating the new programming languages, they are creating the new AI models, they are building the new phones and laptops and hardware, right? We need to be at a place whereby those things actually become a necessity for us. Because if we are still battling with stable electricity, water, roads, right, those things always become secondary, right? But then, because if you have a system whereby you are trying to analyze the voice of, or should I say, analyze the speech of every African tribe to document it. If you were to start or embark on a project like that, you would quickly realize that the regular programming languages can't do the job. So you need to actually work on inventing something new that can do the job, right? But for us to get to that level, we need to have, for something like that to become important in Africa, we need to have dealt with the basic stuff, right? So that's what I mean by the infrastructure piece. It's not that we can't compete or we can't do it with what we have. Is that, for example, the government, I think, released a fund of $215 million towards AI development, right? But then in June, the whole Accra flood, and a few weeks ago, the whole country lost power. So if you've developed an AI system and the whole country has gone off because they have an issue with our power generation system, who's accessing it? So I think that's where
Yeah, I think so. You see, yeah, I get that 100%, and I remember I said, assuming we have all these things are solved, like assuming these problems are solved, will the African be able to still be part of the conversation? You get what I mean?
Yes, because then we'll actually be able to have people we can train. Because then now, if all those things are solved, if I'm going to uni and I say, oh, the Google is building 10 data centers in Accra, right? They're hiring data center technicians, right? Now, they're going to school to become a data center technician becomes attractive, right?
Yeah. I think, yeah, I mean, we can go on and on, but I get it. I hope that maybe at some time in the future we actually converge. But yeah, I get what you mean. Makes sense. Maybe we can move on.
I mean, both points, honestly, they stand. Or Elegant, do you want to add something?
No. You can go on.
All right, I was just gonna say that, both points actually are correct in the domain of sovereignty because, like, to even train the people, then how can I say this? Like globalization, right? In order to like attain that level or that standard, right, where we're able to actually chip in and give like our own point of view on an international level on standards regarding digital sovereignty, for instance, we need to have the states or or every individual country or the African continent to actually synchronize sort of their, their infrastructure, their education system and everything to move towards that goal, right? Essentially. But we're going to move on from the infrastructure talk because we're not there yet, and move on to the second story for tonight because of time. Here, give me a second. Let me just share it with you guys.
Wait 1 second, though. I think Liz had a
Yes.
hand up earlier.
Oh,
I don't
right.
know if she's got a
Liz,
question.
did you want to add something? See.
Oh, like I wanted to say something when they were still talking about data centers and like infrastructure problems in Africa. It reminded me of a case, or like earlier this year or late 2025, there was a story about like Microsoft wanting to build a big data center in Kenya, like $1 billion project. But at the end, the president, William Ruto, came saying that if they have to accept that project, they will have to shut down like the electricity for half of they have to shut off half the country's electricity supply. And still, even if they do that, they will still won't be able to provide enough electricity for the data center. So I don't think it's happening anymore, but like you can see, like it was just like an example of like some of the real challenges that we still need to solve so that we can
Yeah,
achieve. Yeah. It was just
yeah.
that example. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for the
Super
contribution
insightful.
there.
Yeah.
Indeed. Okay, we're going to jump into the second topic, which touches on it's still on the data side of digital sovereignty. We're going to move away from the physical infrastructure point of view. And here we're going to be talking about an issue that happened in Kenya in 2024, I think, which is the Kenyan High Court delivering a landmark biometric data ruling from, how do you call it? this company. Hold on, give me a second. Let me just share that with you guys. I don't know why it's not working right now. Okay, I got it. All right, just to summarize the article here. So the High Court, what I got from it is that the High Court of Nairobi, right, Kenya, ruled that WorldCoin, a company founded by Sam Altman, violated Kenya's Data Protection Act by collecting, processing, and transferring citizens' biometric data without proper regulatory approval or conducting the required impact assessments. And presiding the Justice Aberili, I think, or Roslyn, ordered WorldCoin to immediately stop collecting personal data in Kenya, and mandated the permanent deletion of the unlawfully gathered biometric records from the company, right, or made by the company. And the legal challenge here is that or the legal challenge brought by the Katiba Institute and the International Commission of Jurists argued that offering cryptocurrency compensation in exchange for iris scans violated the principle of informed consent. And here they were offering, in fact, people were selling their data for just $55, right? I don't know how insane that sounds, if that sounds insane to you. It's like giving your I don't know, your fingerprints to some random on the street for just, a mere 500 cities or something like that. Now, the legal and human rights advocates praised the landmark judgment as a powerful precedent, asserting that constitutional privacy rights must take precedence over, technological innovation, right? Because not everyone's data that you sell anyway. And the ruling coincides with, global regulatory scrutiny of WorldCoin, because they're almost everywhere here in the continent, including a temporary suspension of its operations in Indonesia over registration, non-compliance, and organizational identity issues. Well, essentially, that's what the article is talking about. So WorldCoin comes in to Kenya and offers $500 or $55 for you to sell your biometric footprints. I'm pretty sure, Jeremiah, you're quite pissed at the idea of that even happening in the first place. Which brings me to the very first question on this end. With the Kenyan High Court heavily penalizing WorldCoin for using, cryptocurrency as an incentive in regions with high poverty, right? Is it ever possible for citizens to give truly informed consent to foreign tech firms? Right, that goes to Jeremiah first.
Can they give informed consent? Yes, I think they can. But I would say ideally they can, but in practice, it's not so clear, right? When I think I heard of this about 2 years ago, and I was very happy, to be honest, about the Kenyan High Court decision to stop WorldCoin's operations. Because I think the first question we cannot ask ourselves is, if WorldCoin is founded by a US company, why didn't they start in the US? Why did they start by targeting African countries? And not just African countries, but very poor communities in African countries. And that's because they understand the power dynamic, right? They understand that that information they're asking for is extremely valuable, right? And they also understand that those people in those communities are also quite vulnerable, right? Because if you came to an affluent African and said, give me your iris scan because I want to document everybody in the world because I'm building an AI and we need to tell who is real versus who is not real, and I'll pay you 500 cedis or $55, the person would just not do it, right? And so, can we get to a point where African citizens can actually give consent to their data? Yes. I think the way we would reach that will mainly be policy, and our government actually prioritizing that, right? Because I don't think WorldCoin is the last to try something like this. As long as a business can exploit a loophole, there's definitely going to be somebody who's going to exploit that loophole, right? And so the burden now comes on the the, the members of parliament and then the policymakers to create awareness for their citizens to understand that these are the things that are happening. And we can see that in other areas, for example, healthcare, right? There's a huge campaign about AIDS and how it spreads and what you can do to protect yourself. I think data, and in the future, will get to a point whereby it will become as important as your health, because the repercussions of somebody getting access to the data could be as disastrous as you getting actually sick. So maybe not today, but at least our policymakers have to start creating awareness so that people can understand what they have.
Good point. Alikam, you want to add something? Great points raised.
Yeah, just to add a little more to what he said. In an attempt to answer the question, I might even flip the question. I think this question connects to a bigger question. Can policymakers keep up with technology? I think that would be like the bigger general question, right? Can society, in a sense, adapt to how fast technology is moving and like the requirements for technology and all of that? And when I think about it, well, here's what I think. I think that currently tech is moving faster than society can adapt, which also means it's moving faster than policymakers can adapt. So maybe right now it looks like some world countries, some countries, sorry, are rejecting some of these things about privacy, etc. But like Jeremiah is saying, it's just a matter of time. Some other company will come, some other there'll be some necessary reason why you have to get your data out, right? And or maybe they just won't tell you and they'll just take your data anyway. It happened with WhatsApp for a while before people even realized that, oh, they're taking our data, and then they came out with a whole policy and etc. So I think one way or another they're gonna get our data, just because I think the technological advancements are growing at a rapid rate that the policy makers can't keep up with. But I do think at a point, the whole hype about AI would plateau. And maybe around that time, we would have like better ways of dealing with some of these things. Whether it will be too late or not by then, I don't know, right? Whether by that time they've got all our data already and they don't need to now ask anymore. I'm not 100% sure. If I try and look a bit in history, back to the example of in WhatsApp, I think they had a lot of data already before they brought their data policy thing into their like the agreement, the terms and conditions. Yeah, prior to that, they already they already had our data. So yeah, I think that's generally what I think. I think one way or another they're gonna get the data. If it's not WorldCoin, to be some other company. And I think at some point we'll learn how to manage it better. Except I don't know if it will be too late by then or not. Yeah, that's what I think about it. Yeah.
Oh, Frank, yeah, you go ahead.
One thing that in this new age of AI we need to realize is that data is the new gold. if we need to train bigger and better models, we need really good data. And I've just realized that some applications are being specifically made just to collect data. I will never forget there was this Pokemon game that people just go around and just are collecting Pokemon, something as harmless as that. And then later on, all of a sudden, we hear that the company had so much data. Well, of course, they might, for some reasons, they might have needed to make money, which is understandable because you can't really make a certain amount of money from games. Now they started selling this data to a military company, and of course, if we are going to download a game and then we don't read the agreements that we are signing up to, telling us that we are actually giving our own data away, and we're not really conscious of what we're doing. I certainly just realized that lawyers will write big documents, and then what we'll do, we'll just click agree, agree, agreement, agree, agree, so that we can just get to the application that we want to use. And then all of a sudden, someone has your date of birth, it knows what you like doing. So if any of that information can be used against you, well, that will be a very big problem. So we need to really be careful about what we do. And I think Ghana has done the DPA, which I think is, I would say, like that Data Protections Act is some way in the right direction, but how is it also being enforced might be like worth reviewing and see whether it's actually doing its job. And yes, something like that.
Thank you very much. Jeremiah, you want to counter a point?
Oh no, I just wanted
Support.
to add an example to that. So I don't know if any of you have watched Black Mirror. As a very nice, I say, documentary of our current times. But there's a episode where a woman signed up for a streaming service, and then, like Frank said, click through the terms and conditions and then agree to everything. And in the terms and conditions, one line there says the streaming service is allowed to use your likeness to make movies, right? And so she comes back home from work one day and turns on the TV, and there is a movie, right, or a TV series about her life, right? And so she clicks to watch it, and they basically have used her phone to document her entire day and generated an AI version of it as a movie and put it on the platform, right? And I think that with the way technology is moving, would that become something that we'd have to be concerned about? Yes, because like Frank said, when Pokemon Go realized the data they had and how valuable it was, and the people who would be willing to pay for it and how much they were willing to pay for it, they sold it, right? So it really comes back to the kind of question of do we have, or our regulators set up in a way to be able to police or enforce structures that prevent us from dealing with these kind of problems, right? I think that's the way we can truly defend against it. Because if the cost of Pokemon selling that data to the military service was more than the money they would make, obviously they would never have sold it.
Okay, such an interesting point. Francis, do you have any thoughts on the matter? Or have they said it all?
Yes. I mean, I think, yeah, I agree with them. Yes, but I also have an opposite view. I think actually policy and regulation are the weakest route we can take as Africans. Because again, for example, in the case of Kenya, World Coin by Wealth was something that's the technology in its case, it's literally like BTC and Ethereum, the protocols, right? Like cryptocurrencies. Now let's assume that this is a service that was coming to Kenya to actually make Kenyans rich and change the financial system. There would have been a protest. So my thinking is regulations might ride on hearsay, right? Oh, I heard that actually they have your data on their servers and they can manipulate you and what's that. Do you have a version of WorldCoin in your country? If you say some Altman shouldn't implement WorldCoin in Kenya, what are you missing? Right? So you can come up as a government, you can you can write a whole set of conventions and regulations and actually block people from investors and knowledge. I would say people who, whether they mean good or bad, you can literally desist everyone from entering your country. But who is going to get hurt? Right? Probably we should be thinking of the other side as well. If WorldCoin had started in Kenya, this could actually might have been Africa's way of tapping into America's prosperity. Who knows? Because if you look at the application and the design of the system, your Kenyan shilling actually isn't going to devalue based on the government's performance anymore. You could literally be, you're a citizen of the world, and as a citizen of the world whose let's say capital is Washington DC, you are riding at the back of the dollar, right? I wouldn't go deep in there, but what I'm trying to say is that to be strong, or to actually have peace, you have to be strong, right? To in other words, to get what you want, you should have leverage. I'll just use, I think there are a lot of guys here. I think Lisa, Claudia is the only female here, but if you only have one, if you like your whole life as a person, you are just obsessed with one person, that person has control over you, you know. But like then if you have options, who cares? Please, I'm sorry, I can't do this. Have options. There's a reason why the females have options. They don't care about guys, because in their DMs there are about 10 of them and you are begging, what is this? You don't need this. So back to Africa actually going on the path of regulation would just end up like a worse Europe. No, Europe right now is you can think Europe as a regulator. They don't do anything, they just come up with rules to safeguard American technology. And the White House can just say, hey, Europe, today we are cutting you from so and so and so. And the next day you see 25 European leaders sitting on one plane landing in Washington. Everyone has to kneel down, right? So I think policy is actually the weakest link. Rather, it should be more of taking charge of our destiny, saying that we vow to make sure that we will build whatever it takes at all costs. That's all I can say.
Good. That's very nice contribution. Thank you very much for that. And staying again on the topic of data localization, to some extent, I would like to share a story first. This time it's about um, Ghana having the capacity for true digital sovereignty. And the article here, which is the third one I shared, explores whether Ghana has the infrastructure and strategy needed to for true like digital sovereignty, going beyond mere data collect or data localization, right? And while data localization focuses on physical storage within borders, digital sovereignty requires that public control, right, over the infrastructure, the national cybersecurity, and operational governance, right? It's a whole synergy between all departments or fields. And the key challenge highlighted in Ghana's reliance on foreign technology providers, which can limit national authority during geopolitical or cyber crisis. Am I saying? Yeah, right. So the piece emphasizes that building local human capital, right, as we discussed before, such as cloud engineers and cybersecurity experts, alongside creating sustainable energy systems are critical prerequisites for managing digital assets independently, right? And ultimately, the author of that article calls for a holistic, national strategy integrating infrastructure, local talent, and all that. But the real question I want to ask here is, in the case where everyone goes local, right? Or when a country, like let's say in the case of African countries, right? When we don't have these capabilities, right? For instance, the indigenous cybersecurity talent, right? How can I phrase this? What risks are there with going ahead to complying regardless with these policies that are put in place that really just follow, um, you know, foreign interests? Who would like to take that?
For me, that story when I read it reminded me of a story I read last year where I believe the International Criminal Court in Germany decided to replace the Microsoft stack with, I think it's called Nextcloud or Open Cloud, where there's actually an open source version of Microsoft's offering. And I think if I don't quote me, I'm paraphrasing, but I believe there was some tension between them and the US. And so after that, as a step to reduce their reliance on foreign technology, they decided to transition away from using Microsoft services to an open source variant, right? And I'm sure we all can realize that that is not going to be an easy thing. That's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of effort. You're going to have to retrain people to use this new tool. You're going to have to learn how to deploy it in an enterprise setting and all of that, right? But they decided to do it. And because they decided to do it, they're going to have to deal with all of the other issues that come along with it so that they can have this work successfully. Because their goal is to be self-reliant and not dependent on foreign technologies, right? And so if we want that, we also need to understand that it's not going to come for free. We're going to have to pay for it to be able to get that, right? And so with the cybersecurity aspect, right? Yes, I think that we can build that talent, right? Because even the people who have the best cybersecurity today, like I said, they did not wake up with it overnight. They had to go through different stages and they themselves made mistakes. And for us, we are in a very advantageous position because we've seen the mistakes they've made. So there's no need for us to repeat those mistakes again. We can just learn the lessons from them and then completely avoid a set of mistakes that could potentially harm us, right? So I wouldn't be afraid of cybersecurity threats, provided if, say, Ghana or African countries was to take this initiative, they actually took the initiative and it wasn't like a nice announcement where they just announced it and then nobody actually does anything about it, right? But we have, if there's interest, they are willing to compensate people well. They are willing to provide training for people to get the skills in that area. Why not? Well, I believe we would be able to handle the cybersecurity threats, provided we do actually do this right. We provide a training and we provide a proper investment into becoming self-reliant.
Very much. It's a very straightforward take on it. Elikem, would you like to share what your thoughts are on the matter?
Um, when when it comes to, I was just picking up what he said, where Jeremiah was talking about. When it comes to cybersecurity, I always find it a bit hard to take a side because I'm not even really sure what a safe system is. um, just because you generally hear that there's no such thing as a safe system. Something I'm still kind of like trying to figure out and trying to test in some sense, right? I think that I don't know. I know there's no 100% secure system. It's just something I think about consciously, and I'm very conscious about. And so I wouldn't say I have like strong opinions on um this topic particularly. I'm still kind of in the gray for now. Maybe with more information, I'll pick a stance. But currently, I'll just say I'm in the gray. Yeah.
All right, that's totally fine. Well, there's a question that
I
always
think you're
pops up in my
muted,
mind. Oh, I am.
Gerard. So yeah.
I'm muted. Right. I always ask myself, there's this one thing that goes right, like Jeremiah mentioned in the beginning that necessity is always the mother of innovation, right? Or something like invention or something. And I always question myself if we always have to wait, do we always have to wait for policies to be made by the big actors before we actually act upon our own sovereignty? I don't know, what are your thoughts on that one? Still looking at the localization of data protection and everything.
Yes, I think we can trace this back to even the invention of the internet, right? The reason we got the internet was because the US military wanted a way to communicate, right? And so it wasn't out of the goodness of the heart of somebody to make the internet. It was for a purpose, and it evolved, and today we have the internet, right? And so it's not necessarily that we have to wait per se. It's more that what we believe is important drives the things that people do. You get it? And so another example I can give you would be the reverse of this would be Boolean algebra. The mathematician who invented Boolean algebra, when he released his work, he was actually mocked by his peers, right? And ended up dying a poor man. So I think about 100 years later, an engineer called Claude Shannon was analyzing telephone networks and realized that, oh, the way telephone networks behave is very good if you can just express them in Boolean algebra. And then suddenly now his work becomes very important, right? But for every one of him, there are many, many other people who did stuff who today we still don't find the value of it, right? But anytime a country or a people decide that this thing is important to us, and so we are going to go after it, we are going to pursue it, you tend to see that people start building things to allow them achieve that particular thing, right? So I don't think it's necessarily policy per se. I think the policy is a downstream of what do the people believe is important to them, right? And when they decide that, then it becomes policy, and then we pursue it, right? So it becomes a bigger picture of what do we find to be important to us.
All right, thank you very much for that perspective. But now, would you think that compliance, right? Even if we're not waiting for policy every time, we always have to comply. Do they place like a major kind of, blockade to innovating in that sense? Francis, I'll go to you.
Yeah. I think compliance is basically enforcement, right? In my opinion, compliance is enforcement, and we as a group of people or as a race, we've shown for more than 100 years that we are not good at enforcing laws. We evolved with norms rather than laws, right? Where norms are much more spiritual laws. You get what I mean? You believe in something because therefore you do it. For that, we do better at them with no particular reason. But for laws that are set by states and nations, it becomes difficult. So I think that wouldn't necessarily be a stumbling block because again, the enforcement itself is not having any effect. So if we are to do it, it wouldn't really have any, serve as an obstacle or anything on our progress. But I also think that I wanted to touch on what Jeremiah said, but probably my brain is failing. But it's that time of the night, so don't worry. When it comes back, I would just let you guys know. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we know that the African Union right now is moving us towards a single digital market where transactions will be unified or at least standardized across nations on the African continent. But do we think that, can I say this? Can a fragmented, right? Can a fragmented continent, right, in the state it is right now, realistically negotiate on equal footing with like, trillion-dollar tech monopolies as to what is right, or what they would want? Can they have a voice on the table?
No.
Can you repeat the question again? I'm not
So I was
sure.
like, oh, the African Union is like pushing for us to go.
Okay,
Sorry?
then. I was thinking maybe Francis can, from Francis' contribution, maybe to get.
Yeah, okay.
Francis, you go ahead.
Yeah, so I think basically he's trying to ask that, like, big tech guys, you guys, you heard of the is it DEI hiring thing in America where Trump and his guys came on board and they are saying, no, this time around we're only hiring on competence, right? So this question is, big tech and poor Africans, would we have a voice in this whole like data thing? And I think it's a big fat no. Even if they tell us we do have a place, our place is as little as it's as meager as what maybe an ant on a table. Because increasingly, I am a student of geopolitics. In fact, when I say I'm a student of geopolitics, I learn it personally. I follow it every now and then, and the only thing I can get from maybe several years I've been following it or learning is that the weak, there is no mercy for the weak. Unfortunately, it's just that maybe Jeremiah might be the strong one in this room. He will say, "Oh, Francis, yeah, we will not take your data, and once you sign a consent to it, we will not." But they have a mutation of it. Again, you don't control what happens in the back end, and they never ask permissions of you if they want to operate on that mutation. They could say that, yes, we got your data, but we are working on a copy of it, not the original. What can you say? That was not in the contracts. And maybe at the law courts, you will not win. You get what I mean? So again, it still comes back to my points. As Africans, we have to pursue the deeper truth. We have to forgo instant gratification and instant success, where we think that there is a how do I call it? We are working or we are learning for an end destination. No. We just want to unleash liberty. We want to seek truth and meaning and knowledge that will create freedom, and that freedom itself is prosperity. Because if you think about it, again, basic economics, if I can grow, like, let's say, potatoes, and you have potatoes, who is more wealthier? Sorry, if I can grow potatoes and you have money, you have, let's say, 100 money and 100 Ghana cedis, sorry, who is more wealthier? Do you think it's you that you have the, let's say, maybe 100 cedis is too small, let's say 100 million Ghana cedis, and I have, let's say, 1 acre plots of farmland where I can grow potatoes, who's more wealthier? In the current context, you would think that, oh, because you have currency, you are wealthy. But no, the one who can always reproduce that thing, who has a template of making it happen, is the one that will survive even on the Sahara Desert, right? So I think that's what I want to pass across in this podcast. Yeah. So thank you.
It's a very rich contribution. Oh, that's a very rich contribution indeed. Jeremiah, did you have any additions to what Francis said?
I don't know. There's nothing else to add. The stronger right and the weaker wrong. It's basically that.
How then do we become, despite our weak state, how do we leverage what we have best, right? I know we have like natural resources. We also have, human capital, right, to some extent. How do we leverage that to actually, raise our voice a little higher?
To me, when I think about that, or I hear that point being discussed, the first thing or the first question that comes to mind is, do we actually want to? Right? Because if we want to, we would have done that. Right? But even quite recently, I don't watch football personally. I'm not like a football fan, but I saw the discussions about the FIFA investment plan and how different people had different interests. Right. Where some were saying that no, the way the game is played, the love of the game, you can't allow it to get destroyed. And others were saying that, well, it will help those who don't have the resources. Right. And so, and then I'm sure that there are people, all of us can quote different instances of that type of uh, thinking, right? So the first question for me is, which I've never been able to come to conclusion, is that do we actually want a seat at the table, and do we actually want to have our voices heard, right? Because we can look at China. It was not easy when Huawei lost access to Android, right? And it was not easy when they didn't have access to GPUs from NVIDIA and uh, Intel chips, right? But today, China has microprocessors that work based of x86 architecture. Today, they've designed GPUs. There was an article where the developers of the Kimi AI model were saying that they don't even have as much resources as the frontier labs in the US, right? But because China has decided that digital sovereignty is important to us, they are looking for ways to empower their people to actually achieve that goal, right? So I think to answer your question, we first need to answer the question of, do we collectively as a people want to sit at the table or not? Without that, the how we get there, I don't think becomes effective.
Very great reflection question that we're going to use to close the session, unfortunately. But I do think, or I do hope that with what we've discussed today, we're actually able to educate some people, right? For those who were watching on YouTube or something, and for ourselves, right, to kind of see different perspectives from different backgrounds here. But I would like to hear again one last thing, right? I would like to ask one last question to everyone here. To just like summarize in just one sentence, right, from each of you. Let's say 10 years from now, right? 10 years from now, will the internet remain, in fact, well, will the internet here in Africa remain a global, like sort of like a connected network? Or will it still just shatter into highly, guarded national interests? Who wants to go first?
Yes, I think the internet penetration would increase with the rise of satellite-based terminals. We would see you know a rise in penetration, and it actually might be a good thing for us in the African unity, Pan-Africanism agenda that Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and co you know for some years back they've had to fight for. So yeah, we a more connected Africa means Gerald is not far from me in Cameroon. Frank is not far from me in Rwanda. Claudia is not far from me wherever she is from. Yeah. So my guess is in 10 years we'd have more people on the internet in Africa. And the good side is that we get to mingle among ourselves as one people. And of course there are a ton of downsides because one is that we don't control what we see. The things we see are controlled by foreign governments, the US and China. TikTok, for example, our young ones don't control what they see. There are no filters, and we don't have the power to set that filters. And for the American apps, we have no power. These are the downsides. So yeah, that's my point.
Great points. Great points. Great point there. What about you, Jeremiah? What's your take on the matter?
Yes, I agree with Francis that I do believe that internet penetration across Africa for the next 10 years will definitely greatly increase. I would be very happy if you go to 100% in the next 10 years, although I don't think it's quite likely. I still choose to remain hopeful. But I think the internet of 10 years to come might be very different from how we experience the internet today, right? I think we're all aware of the age verification laws that are being tried, that are increasingly being pushed. We're all aware of the statistics of how many bots are on the social media platforms. And so you might not actually be interacting with human beings. And that builds up what Fats is saying, where if you don't even today we don't even control what we see and the accounts we interact with. What about an internet where our youth are actually not even interacting with human beings and are interacting with AI agents and chatbots, right? So while I'm happy that we would be at a place where there's more access to the internet for the continent, I also think that we also need to start planning for the risks that will become along.
Beautiful. Mr. Frank, we're on to you. Frank, are you in? Are you muted? All right, seems like something's happening there. I'll move on to
Sorry?
Belize then. All right, okay. So I was passing a question around, which is that, I don't know, were you able to hear the question?
Not completely.
Okay, so I asked that 10 years from now, looking at Africa's, network, right, or internet infra, then do you think it's gonna be unified, or do you think we're still going to stay in our little silos that we're in right now?
Based on what I've been saying is that some okay, I would use Rwanda as the example because that's what I know and that's what I've experienced is that I've been seeing Rwanda invest a lot in fiber optic, and for that reason we've had a relatively cheap and accessible Wi-Fi. But when I crossed the border and went into the neighbors, it's you kind of really see the price hike. And to when I compare it to somewhere like in Europe where you can buy one eSIM and then you'll be crossing into France, you go into Switzerland, same card, they're just billing you at the end, and network is still good. But MTN works almost everywhere in Africa. If I take my MTN card and just go into Benin, it becomes almost worthless. It's really a challenge, and it's an infrastructure challenge, and it's really for the money that it would take to unify that whole experience would be astronomical, because none of these countries before, when they were buying their network, thought of unifying at some point. So if we try to do that right now, it's gonna be expensive. But for fiber optic, I think we would rather go with Elon Musk's. uh, I know you guys, you know what I mean, because those mini satellites, I call them mini satellites, are offering good networking across the world, and I think it's decent. Not the person running them behind or whatever his purpose is, but I think for that thing, I think I would thank Elon Musk for that. So if we go with that, at some point, if Elon Musk make internet is Starlink is very affordable, then we'll be all right. But asking MTN and Orange and other telecell provider, well, I doubt about telecell. I don't know who uses telecell here, but but yeah, telecell will improve. Telecell and Airtel will improve, but I'm just saying that in 10 years it's possible. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's possible, but it will really take a lot of investment, which I doubt anyone is willing to burden themselves with.
Awesome. Great take, at least hopefully shared by everyone. Now, finally, Liz, see your opinion on matter.
So I think 10 years time is very short for such an achievement. And as Frank was saying, like it's very difficult. If I give an example, like from my country, Francis was asking where I'm from. I'm from Burundi, and like we don't have. You see, like Burundi has their own internet providers companies that are not found anywhere in the world. Like we have Limitel, we have Leo, and I don't think there is any other country in Africa that has that. It's just us, and that's just internet. And we can also talk about like money. This is not related, but even for money, you can do like cross-border transfers in Burundi. And if we go to talking to an extent of like when they connect with other African countries, that is going to be really difficult, because maybe the start will be maybe if MTN starts working in Burundi, but I don't think and they are planning on that anytime soon. So maybe probably some African countries will be able to achieve something like that in a 10 years time, but I doubt if it will be up to 20 countries out of 50 something countries. Yeah, it's still a challenge, and it also comes back to the infrastructure and investment program. I don't think they will want to invest more in that, because we still have healthcare programs, education programs, and like some of our political leaders, they don't see the need of it, because when you talk about internet, for some people, what will come to their mind will be like social media, the youth like just scrolling on social media stuff, and they will be like, we have like better problems to solve instead of like providing internet for the youth to just go and waste their time on social medias. So I think it's very it's a lot of problems that's around the problem. They'll be understanding the why, like the importance of the internet, and also like understand that it's one of the critical let's say infrastructure or resource that we need so that we can develop the other sectors. And yeah, better leadership and a lot of economy powers that are going to go together so that we can get there. Yeah, I think that's what I have to share on the topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, you all,
Mhm.
for the awesome night. Unfortunately, we have to close now. We spent about an hour, almost 2 hours now. I'm doing the tech pod, but it was very insightful, right? I enjoyed everyone's company. Unfortunately, we had like two more people who were going to join in, but they weren't able to. Hopefully, we'll see them in the upcoming tech pods. About the upcoming ones, as we speak, there are a couple topics that would be explored. We'd really love you to have you panelists again. Francis Elikem, who left because he had to go to something, perhaps sleep, and Jeremiah. I'm sorry for keeping you all late, like awake and this late, but hopefully you enjoyed the session. The topics that we will be exploring next month, right? We have the choice between product development, that's the crux of product development, scaling software as a business, and software testing ideology. Just keep that in mind. If you're interested, just let me know. You can join in again, and we'll see how that one goes. But for today, we're closing today's first official tech pod. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You all have a great night. I'll be seeing you in the upcoming ones. Hopefully you join. Bye bye, people. Great night. See you all.